Hokage, in the name of time, shock the ninja world. Chapter 81. Kill the chicken to scare the monkeys. Demonstration. After Kamui passed, Izawa Yumi said teasingly, "You are back, those people will be scared out of their wits." "Are you scared?" "Huh, it's not that simple. They will not give up until they reach the Yellow River. Driven by interests, they will not give in easily." Hoshino Fong snorted, shook his head and said. Izawa Yume thought brightly and smiled broadly, "Even if you are stubborn, they won't be able to defeat you. Sooner or later. Maybe, I hope they know the current affairs." Hoshino Kaede rubbed his eyebrows. "There are a lot of woodleaf borers. I don't have the time to deal with them one by one." "Do you know the person behind them?" Hoshino Kaede asked at this time. Hearing this, Izawa Ikumi said, "I only know a few things. She is not a soft persimmon. She has her own people in recent years, and some rumors cannot be avoided by her. That's enough to scare the monkeys." Hoshino Kaede waved his hand. He couldn't catch them all in one go, that would hurt Konoha's vitality too much. "This is not a good idea and will only hurt yourself." "Indeed." Immediately, Izawa Yumi revealed some of the families behind her. Hoshino Kaede's eyes flickered, and he sneered when he heard about one of the families. "Oh, the benefits are so touching. I thought that the big family would be penultimate and would not be greedy, but I didn't expect that." Izawa Ikumi saw this clearly. When the profit reaches 200%, even brothers can be killed. "You're right." Hoshino Kaede's eyes flashed with surprise. "Okay, I'm good at it, and I can say this kind of thing." "That's necessary." Izawa Yumi gave him a white look. "After all these years of training, it's strange that I haven't made any progress." Yes. Hoshino Kaede smiled helplessly. While the two were chatting and joking, the darkness of Konoha was filled with treacherous clouds and turbulent undercurrents. Due to the fate of Hiruzen Sarutobi's Umbu, news of Kaede Hoshino's return to the village spread instantly. For a time, all the families unanimously issued orders to restrain their clansmen and not cause trouble. When Sarutobi Hiruzen received this news, a cheerful smile appeared on his lips. It still takes Xiaofeng to calm the situation. When Hoshino Kaede returns, the families who are most panicked are those who are grabbing profits. Hyuga clan land. Hyuga Sheng is now 33 years old, more calm than when he was young, and has taken over the position of clan leader. And he already has two sons, the future Hyuga Hayashi and Hyuga Hazashi. During the meeting, all the clan leaders and family elders were present. After everyone sat down, no one spoke to break the silence. Hyuga Sheng sighed and looked at the third elder. Are the third elders still planning to remain silent? If Mr. Hoshino really finds out, I'm afraid things won't be simple. As soon as he finished speaking, the eyes of everyone present focused on him, their eyes meaning unclear. I don't know what the clan leader is talking about," the third elder said with a gloomy face. The second elder snorted coldly and looked at him with sharp eyes. "Do you have to make things get out of hand? Hoshino Kaede is not a kind person. Once we take the opportunity to suppress Hyuga, there is nothing we can do. Do you want Hyuga to be left alone?" At the end of the sentence, the second elder almost yelled, and the righteous look on his face made the third elder feel angry and said with a pinched neck, "Don't say it so high-sounding. You all know what I did, but no one stopped me. Except for the clan leader, didn't you all get huge benefits? If something happens now, just shrink your necks, push me out, and get out of the way. It's a beautiful idea." The third elder's words caused everyone's expressions to change several times, each with its own merits. Only Hyuga Sheng and the great elder were sitting on the high platform, acting as if it had nothing to do with them. Hyuga is not the patriarch of the clan, and the other elders have their own responsibilities. After the death of the previous patriarch, the power of the elders increased day by day, and the patriarch's right to speak naturally decreased. Except for the great elder who has lived longer, the other elders have all been replaced. In comparison, the great elder has more power. Seeing that everyone was noisy, the great elder coughed lightly, and the scene fell silent instantly. Seeing this, the great elder nodded, and then looked at everyone. When Hoshino Kaede comes back, the power structure of Konoha will change drastically. Hyuga is attached to Konoha after all, so we can't make things too tense. Hyuga Sheng asked, "What does the great elder mean?" "Give back everything you have swallowed over the years." The great elder's tone was slow, but there was no room for doubt. Hearing this, the third elder became anxious. Great elder. Huh? Boss De Chang said with an expression on his face, not showing off his anger. The third elder lowered his head and said unwillingly, but. It's nothing. The great elder waved his hand and agreed, but then he said, my lineage will help you part way. Hyuga Sheng looked at the elder in surprise. This is not a small number. Seeing everyone's surprised expressions, the elder smiled slightly. If Hyuga is gone, what's the use of money? As soon as this statement came out, everyone admired him in their hearts. After hearing this, Hyuga Sheng said immediately, as the leader of the clan, I am also bound to pay a share. The great elder touched his beard, his eyes flashed, he smiled and said nothing. The rest of the people looked at me and I looked at you, all looking confused. The great elder saw all this and couldn't help but sigh in his heart. The future of the Zong family is uncertain. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door outside the closed door. Dong dong dong. Then a childish voice sounded, Father, can I come in? Hyuga Sheng frowned, with a dissatisfied look on his face, and was about to snap. But he was interrupted by the great elder, who said with a smile to the door, Come in, Hayashi. After saying that, the door was pushed open, and Hyuga Hayashi saw his father's dissatisfied face at a glance. Father. Little Hayashi bowed solemnly, and then saluted all the clan elders. Although he is still young, his etiquette and behavior show his aristocratic style. Hayashi, what's the matter with you? The great elder said pleasantly. Completely opposite to the stern-faced Hyuga Mori. Hayashi lowered his head, not daring to look at Hyuga Sheng, and explained his purpose in a low voice. It's about Hoshino-sama. Oh. Tell me in detail. The great elder exchanged glances with several people and said. Not long ago, the Ministry of Commerce brought out several people, all of whom are heads of small families who are close to Hyuga. But his complexion is sluggish and his face is older, giving people a feeling of being old. Hayashi glanced at Hyuga Sheng vaguely, saw him nodding slightly, and briefly explained the general process. Several people looked at each other with shock. Hayashi said nothing with a wink, and stood obediently without moving. After a long time, the great elder slowly said, he is demonstrating for those who have evil intentions to see. While speaking, he looked at the third elder meaningfully. I guess his next step will be to remove obstacles with thunderous means. Hyuga Sheng nodded in agreement. You don't have much time. The great elder shook his head and said. Send it over quickly. Chapter 82. Hyuga apologizes, the storm is coming. Hoshino Kaede's return was like a hurricane, sweeping through the entire Konoha. People with ghosts in their hearts are in fear and uneasiness all day long, and their days are like years. And this is the effect Hoshino Kaede wants. Only the fear of the unknown can shake people's hearts. In this way, 3 days passed without any movement from Hoshino Kaede, and he started living normally. Brother, I'm really tired. Can I let my lovely brother have a rest? Hoshino Hui blinked his big eyes, showing an aggrieved look. However, Hoshino Kaede just glanced at him without saying a word, but the meaning was clear. Not allowed. If you can't finish the run, you won't be allowed to eat. Hoshino Kaede slowly said the consequences of not finishing. Hoshino Fai pouted, but did not dare to refute. After these 3 days, Hoshino Fai finally understood that this brother is really selfless in training and does not let go of anything. Seeing the look on his brother's face that wanted to resist but didn't dare, Hoshino Kaede shook his head and laughed. Counting the time, it's time to come. Hoshino Kaede murmured to himself outside the door. I have been waiting here since early in the morning, as if I had expected a guest to arrive today. After a while, the self-talk turned into a smile, waiting quietly. Soon, a calm voice came, Hoshino-sama, Hyuga Ming came to visit. The corners of Hoshino Kaede's lips raised, then disappeared, pretending to just get up and stepped forward to the gate of opening. The head of the Hyuga family must have something important to come over early in the morning. Hoshino Kaede rubbed his sleepy eyes and yawned. Hyuga Sheng's mouth twitched, and he cursed in his heart, don't you know what's going on when I come? But his face was extremely respectful, and he even bowed slightly and said, I apologize for disturbing your dreams. When Hoshino Teru saw this, his little eyes widened and his mouth opened slightly. So awesome. The initial resentment disappeared instantly, and his eyes turned into admiration. This is a big family in Konoha Hyuga, even the head of the family is so respectful. Seeing this, Hoshino Teru silently threw his lazy thoughts into the sea and started practicing hard. I can't afford to offend him, and I can't even afford to hide. No need to be polite, just saying, don't worry. Hoshino Kaede waved his hand generously and invited him in. Yes. Hyuga walked down the steps naturally, and then said, Hoshino-sama's return is Konoha's blessing. Hoshino Kaede turned around and looked at him with a smile. He was excited first and then suppressed, right? Hyuga was very nervous when he saw it. He took a deep breath and gritted his teeth and said, Hyuga knows that the matter cannot be hidden from the Lord, so he came here to apologize. Saying that, he actually gave Hoshino Kaede a seat. Such a decisive look made Hoshino Kaede look at him differently. This is definitely not a negotiated matter. The leader of the clan also wants to have face, not counting the ones who made trouble before. Hyuga must have made his own decision. Hoshino Kaede didn't speak immediately, and Hyuga kept his posture and didn't get up. The atmosphere was stagnant for a moment, and the heavy atmosphere made Hyuga sweat on his forehead, his cold eyes piercing his back, and his whole body felt chilly. After a long time, Hoshino Kaede said quietly, if admitting your mistake is useful, then what else should the security team do? Just one sentence doubled Hyuga's pressure, and he immediately shouted, Hyuga returns all benefits. That's all? Hoshino Kaede said expressionlessly, his voice as cold as a machine. The mountain-like pressure pressed down on Hyuga, making him almost breathless. Seeing this, Hyuga said with difficulty, in addition, within 2 years, 30% of Hyuga's industrial income will be handed over to Konoha. As soon as he finished speaking, the terrifying pressure dissipated instantly, like the ebbing tide. Then, Hoshino Kaede seemed to have changed, and he helped Hyuga Mori up with a smile on his face. Oh, it seems that the Hyuga clan leader is very knowledgeable. Not bad, not bad. Hyuga forced a smile, but actually his heart was bleeding. The Hyuga family can become a wealthy family, and its industries are spread all over the Fire Country, just like Senju and Uchiha. 30% of the revenue almost caused Hyuga heavy losses. But he had to do this, just now. If he hadn't said this, Hyuga's status would definitely not be guaranteed in the future. Hoshino Kaede can support other families in minutes. This is unacceptable to Hyuga. If you can contribute to Konoha, you should. Hyuga just wants to end it as soon as possible and doesn't want to stay anymore. Master Hoshino has many things to do, so I won't interrupt you. When Hoshino Kaede saw this, he knew it was enough and let people leave. After watching Hyuga leave, Hoshino Kaede slowly returned to his chair. Shall we? I still like your coquettish look. Hoshino Teru immediately ran to him like a doglegger, pinched his shoulders and rubbed his legs. Brother, it's my brother's ignorance, so you can have more, okay? His face changed. Hoshino Kaede rubbed his head vigorously and said, okay, but there will be no next time. Hearing this, Hoshino Teru immediately nodded firmly. After sending his brother away, Hoshino Kaede still sat on the chair and sat there all day long. At night, Hoshino Kaede looked at the empty door and couldn't help but shake his head. Oh, it's all just a matter of luck. If a tiger doesn't show off its power, it really thinks I'm easy to bully. Hoshino Kaede's eyes flashed fiercely, and the corners of his mouth raised slightly. If you don't want to give me face, then don't blame me for not giving you a chance. The next day, Hoshino Kaede asked Danzo to summon all the clan leaders of Konoha for a meeting at the Hokage building. After hearing the news, one sentence came to everyone's mind. The storm has begun. Among them, only Hyuga breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he visited in advance and the disaster could not affect Hyuga. An hour later, all the top management of Konoha were present, and even Uzumaki Mito was invited over by Hoshino Kaede. Everyone, Konoha has been very lively in the past few years since I was away. After Hoshino Kaede looked around, Yuyo said in a very casual tone. But everyone present was shocked, to be honest. A few days ago, the head of the Hyuga clan came to visit us and we had a lot of conversations, which really touched my heart. This sentence made Hyuga eyes suddenly startled. How could he still have a role in the scene? When everyone mentioned it, they lowered their heads, did not dare to look at her, and acted like a coward. Seeing that the atmosphere was almost complete, Hoshino Kaede's tone suddenly dropped to the bottom, exuding a deep chill. But what chills me is that Konoha hasn't made much progress in the past few years. It's almost standing still, and even, it's slightly regressed. I wonder if you can give me an explanation. Uzumaki Mito didn't dare to speak when he saw everyone, and the corners of his eyes curved into crescent shapes, showing his mood. After Tobirama left, no one could take the lead, and the ninja clan, which was originally suppressed, began to swell. It made Konoha a mess and made the people miserable. Even if she wants to change her mind, she can't beat four hands with two fists. Now that Hoshino Kaede is back, everyone is like quail, which is really satisfying. Chapter 83. A combination of kindness and power. The main theme of silence still echoed among everyone, and no one dared to speak. Hoshino Kaede glanced around and tapped his knuckles on the table, making a clear sound. Already mute? Why are you so active when you are seeking benefits for the family? The sarcasm included everyone. As for me, I was born in the first year of Konoha and grew up with Konoha. When my teacher was alive, he asked me to take good care of Konoha and not let some people with evil intentions harm Konoha. Hoshino Kaede's eyes jumped back and forth between the few people with a smile, and his eyes were so cold that people lowered their heads and dared not look directly. Tell me, who could be that person? Is it Uchiha? Or Hyuga? Or maybe someone else? Hyuga Sheng and Uchiha Kitajima both trembled in fear. Seeing these clan leaders who usually show off their power, Danzo and Hiruzen felt very happy. All these years of grievances were released. Hoshino-sama. Seeing that no one had spoken, Nara Shikaichi, the think tank of Konoha, said bravely. Senior Shikaichi. Seeing that it was Nara Shikaichi, Hoshino Kaede immediately became friendly. Judging from the available information, the three clans of Pig, Deer, and Dai are the most peaceful. Nara waved his hands repeatedly, sweating on his forehead. No, Hoshino-sama, please call me Shikaichi. It was a joke. Even though he was being polite and it didn't look like he was being fake, he couldn't take it seriously. Okay. Hoshino Kaede didn't force himself and said, Does Louis have anything to say? Nara swallowed his saliva and said despite the pressure, I am to blame for what happened to Konoha. Oh. Hoshino Kaede put his hands on the table and asked with confusion, what does this have to do with Louis? Is the Nara clan also involved? No. Nara was shocked and turned pale, waving his hands quickly. Absolutely not. Then why do you say that? As the Jonin class monitor, I have neglected my duty. Nara lowered his head and said. Hoshino Kaede squinted his eyes and said with a smile, it seems that Zhulu Dai is not going to protect himself wisely. As soon as Nara heard this, cold sweat broke out from his back and his heart beat wildly. These words simply set the three tribes on fire. To put it nicely, you are telling Mingzhi to protect yourself, but to put it badly, you are just watching from the other side. Before he could explain anything, Hoshino Kaede stood up and looked at them calmly. Now the model of the ninja world has been basically finalized, and the 5 major ninja villages jointly occupy most of the resources. The kind of war between ethnic groups will no longer return, and it has evolved into a war between villages. If the big tree of Konoha falls, your families who are attached to Konoha will also have a hard time. There was a pause for a few seconds between words, and the quiet conference room was filled with the sound of chaotic breathing. Seeing this, Hoshino Kaede raised the corner of his mouth and continued, since you are not convinced by Danzo, then I will be the third Hokage. What do you think? The tone was very soft, as if he was asking for everyone's opinions, but as soon as he finished speaking, everyone agreed. Agree. I agree. Yes, I support Hoshino-sama to become the third Hokage. If anyone goes against Mr. Hoshino, I will be in trouble with him. For a moment, the conference room was in chaos, and everyone spoke so eagerly for the first time. It seems that if you are slow, you will be liquidated. Danzo and Hiruzen were filled with envy when they saw this scene. When the two of them were in charge of Konoha, they were almost convinced and could not give orders to the village at all. Now, Hoshino Kaede just asked, and everyone agreed. No wonder teacher Tobirama insisted on letting Hoshino Kaede serve as the third Hokage. With such methods and such strength, the two of them are ashamed of themselves. The wind direction suddenly changed, and Nara Louis was secretly frightened. Looking at the excited expressions of everyone, he couldn't help but admire. Second generation's eyes are really vicious. Hoshino Kaede let them talk for a while, then pressed his hands, and the voices suddenly subsided. Since everyone agrees, it will be easy to handle. Before, I spoke in terms of strength, but now, I will speak in the name of Hokage. A cunning look flashed across his eyes, like a cunning cat. I hope some people will take the initiative and save me from going to his door one by one to talk to him. As soon as these words came out, everyone's expressions became stiff, as if there was a clicking sound. Seeing their expressions, Hoshino Kaede flashed a fierce light and his voice couldn't help but deepen. What? Are you in any trouble? Kind looks swept over them one by one, and when he saw that they looked defeated, he nodded with satisfaction. Since I have no objection, then so be it. Oh, Danzo and Hiruzen are in charge of this, I don't want to hear that person was left out. Hoshino Kaede left the matter to Danzo. After all, this was his specialty and it could also give him a bad breath. It will be done beautifully. Danzo emphasized his tone at the end. Okay, Nara Louis is here to stay, and the rest can go home. Remember to seize the time. Hoshino Kaede finally smiled at everyone. Hello, everyone meeting came to an end. Before leaving, Hiruzen and Danzo looked at each other and both grinned, looking extremely happy. He seemed to be a little carefree when he walked, and it was foreseeable that those people were going to make things difficult for him. After everyone left, only one Nara deer was left, looking calm on the outside, but in reality, he was terrified. After all, everyone is gone and you are the only one left behind. Plus what happened just now is not a good thing no matter how you think about it. Louis. Hoshino Kaede shouted, bringing him back to his senses. Mr. Hoshino, why are you keeping me here? Nara asked boldly. I offended you a lot, please don't mind. Unexpectedly, Hoshino Kaede apologized to him instead. This frightened Nara Shikaichi, and he quickly said, Hoshino-sama is all for Konoha, Shikaichi is not at ease. I say this, but I really think so in my heart. Hoshino Kaede must have deep feelings for Konoha. What I said to him before was actually a slap on his face, and Zulidi did indeed neglect his duties. Hearing this, Hoshino Kaede smiled even more, I'm relieved if you think so. The Nara family has been making suggestions for the village since the founding of Konoha, and they have worked hard and made great achievements. You three tribes are also the most peaceful. It saves me a lot of worry. Faced with Hoshino Kaede's praise, Nara breathed a sigh of relief. For this reason, Pig Deer Butterfly has been crossed off the danger list. However, in the future, I hope that the Nara family will always maintain their original aspirations and not go astray. This is a reminder and a warning. It means that as long as you follow Hokage firmly, nothing will happen. If you have second thoughts, haha. Of course. Nara nodded lightly and assured. That's good. Hoshino Kaede smiled. Okay, that's it. You decide the time for the Hokage's inauguration ceremony. Understood. Nara straightened his expression and said seriously. Chapter 84. Third Hokage. Looking at Nara Louis' leaving figure, Hoshino Kaede couldn't help but chuckle. Then he turned to look at Uzumaki Mito, who had been sitting here and not leaving. Master, is there anything else you can do? Uzumaki Mito shook his head and said with a smile, I haven't seen you for a few years, you have matured a lot. Is it mature? Hoshino Kaede said to herself. During these 8 years, he traveled in the dragon veins, comprehending the laws of space all day long, without stopping for a day. Who knows how boring cultivation is and how difficult it is to gain enlightenment? No, it's just that after seeing too much and thinking too much, it will come naturally. Thinking of this, Hoshino Kaede shook his head and said sadly, with a hint of exhaustion. Uzumaki Mito was startled. She looked at his face carefully and found that he was missing a trace of innocence and a little more steady. She sighed. Thank you for your hard work, you still have to clean up this mess in Konoha. Hearing this, Hoshino Kaede grinned, no hard work, this is where I grew up, how could I ignore it? Uzumaki Mito nodded and didn't say anything else. She knew that Hoshino Kaede could grasp the sense of proportion. He immediately changed the subject and started talking about him. The third Hokage has been in limbo for the past few years. Both Monkey and Danzo have been restrained, and they have been careful, but they can't stop it after all. Hoshino Kaede chuckled, it's normal, everyone has it, selfishness exists in the heart and cannot be eliminated, just let everything happen. You can see clearly. Uzumaki Mito sighed. I hope they both can let it go. Hoshino Kaede smiled and said nothing. Half a day later, the news of Hoshino Kaede taking over as third Hokage swept the streets. When the older generation heard the news, they all cheered with joy. The younger generation knew very little about it, but news soon spread about Hoshino Kaede, disciple of the First Hokage. Defeat Raikage, restore the general situation, make Yunin retreat and negotiate peace, establish the Ministry of Commerce, and integrate the chaotic situation. These deeds made Konoha, which had been silent for a long time, instantly boil. Brother, are you going to be a Hokage? When he got home, Hoshino Taro couldn't wait to ask, his little eyes full of excitement. The news spread very quickly, and Hoshino Kaede was slightly surprised for a moment. It seems that someone is adding fuel to the flames. Well, I guess the ceremony will be held soon. Hoshino Kaede nodded and admitted. Wow. Upon hearing this, Hoshino Taro immediately jumped up and down, shouting, and those who didn't know thought he was a Hokage. Hoshino Kaede shook his head helplessly. His mentality was nothing more than my brother has become the Hokage, and then I will be the Hokage's younger brother. It's a pity that this is not an honor, but a burden to him. Words and looks can kill, and excessive expectations can crush a person's spine. Brother. At this moment, Hatake Sakumo appeared in front of the two of them. Brother Sakumo. Hoshino Taro saw Hatake Sakumo and said hello immediately, even the arrogance he had just extinguished a little. The reason is that Hoshino Taro was trained by Hatake Sakumo when he was a child. That's called being selfless. Hoshino Taro is really a mouse trembling in the corner when it sees a cat. Hatake Sakumo has had a psychological shadow since he was a child. Congratulations, brother, for becoming the third Hokage. Hatake Sakumo expressed his sincere congratulations. He is now the captain of Umbu and is well informed. He came over as soon as he got the news. Hoshino Kaede glanced at Hoshino Taro, who was shrinking his neck, and said, well, it seems that the news has spread in Konoha. There are probably many more people coming next. Yeah. Hatake Sakumo nodded. It's officially the third Hokage after all. Talk about Cao Cao, Cao Cao arrives. Hoshino Kaede's heart moved, and he looked out the door, feeling helpless. Did you discuss this? It's just a coincidence. Uchiha said with a tilt of his head, hoping not to admit it. Izawa Ikumi glanced at him and directly exposed his cover-up, the duplicitous guy. He was very nervous just now and thought he wanted to bring some gifts. You. Uchiha was furious and glared. Izawa Ikumi simply ignored him, not even giving him a look. When Hoshino Kaede saw this, he couldn't help but hold his forehead. You two are really happy enemies. Who is her enemy? The two said in unison, even speaking at the same frequency. When their eyes met, Uchiha's face turned red and he retreated first. Hoshino Kaede was stunned for a moment, then showed a meaningful smile and whispered to himself, TSK, I didn't expect it. What didn't you expect? Fuga and Mei tilted their heads in confusion. It's nothing. Hoshino Kaede shook his head, not intending to expose it. It's not the time yet. He rolled his eyes, then looked at Tadu Takatora with a wicked smile, and whispered, Takatora, is there anyone you like? Uchiha's mind was spinning fast, and he suddenly thought that there was something behind Hoshino Kaede's words, and his face suddenly turned red, reducing his sense of presence. But no one noticed anything was wrong. Tudo Takatora instantly blushed and shook his head, but glanced at Kazumi from the corner of his eye. Hoshino Kaede took a breath of cold air, looked at Takatora to the left, and Kazumi to the right. This looks like another pair. Good guy, the four of them have digested it internally, but it seems that both of them are wishful thinking. Neither Kazumi nor Ikumi seemed to know that they were being targeted. Hoshino Kaede's gaze was so intense that both of them were confused. Izawa Ikumi twitched the corner of her mouth and shouted, What are you looking at? Can the Hokage do whatever he wants? Hoshino Kaede coughed several times, looked at Tudo Takatora and Yukawang imperceptibly, and said, That's okay, I'm just thinking about things, yes, just thinking about things. A serious expression, as if it was really that way. But these words made the two of them still suspicious. Fortunately, 3 disciples of Hoshino Kaede came over to interrupt the strange atmosphere. Teacher. ×3. Hoshino Kaede looked at the 3 of them and sighed, time flies so fast. The 3 little ones have grown so big. Aren't you talking nonsense? It's been 8 years, can't you grow up? Yu Guangya spoke quickly and spoke without thinking. Yuhi Jinhong and Mitarashi Zixiao looked at each other helplessly. When they first met, they started to talk, which was like asking for a beating. Sure enough, veins popped up on Hoshino Kaede's forehead, and he immediately punched him on the head. Boom! Hoshino Kaede blew his fist, and a huge bag appeared above Yu Guanye's head. Xiaoyi, are you itchy? You want me to help you relax? Hoshino Kaede said with a smile. A chill that penetrated into the spinal cord surged out of Yu Guanye's heart. He immediately laughed and tried to please him. Humph. Seeing this, Hoshino Kaede snorted coldly, then looked at them and said, "We have already met, let's go back. Don't you have a lot of time?" After a pause, his eyes turned to the moonlight night again. Don't think that I don't know what your plans are. Even a Hokage disciple cannot relax. Otherwise, I will let you feel the pain of childhood again. Moonlight Knight nodded like a chicken in a hurry, and then disappeared without a trace. Seeing this, the other two had no choice but to follow. This brat has a lot of clever ideas. Hoshino Kaede said this without really getting angry. When one person attains enlightenment, chickens and dogs ascend to heaven, this is the most appropriate time to do so. Chapter 85. Nara solves the puzzle. The calm lake surface was rippled, and the news that the third Hokage was Hoshino Kaede spread throughout the ninjas over time. In Hidden Cloud Village, the newly appointed third Raikage has a solemn face, looking in the direction of the Fire Country and muttering to himself. Yunyan's mistakes will be repaid in one fell swoop. As he spoke, the powerful chakra burst out from his body, forming a force that soared into the sky. The surrounding walls were crumbling and sand and stones were flying. In an instant he disappeared again. After hearing this, third generation Kazekage and third Mizukage were both shocked and felt full of pressure. This is bad news for other countries, but for Konoha and the Fire Nation, it can be described as joyful. Nara Tribe Land. Nara Shikaichi is worried about planning the time and various details of the inauguration of third Hokage. Since that day, his attitude has changed. He no longer pretends to be deaf and mute, and fully assists Hoshino Kaede. Relying on past interactions, he knew the Hokage's temper and character well, and his skills were not much worse than those of Tobirama. If we continue to watch from the sidelines, the day when the clan will be exterminated is not far away. Oh, it's hard to do. Nara sighed secretly. For the inauguration ceremony, his hair fell all over the floor. Every Shadow's inauguration ceremony is not that simple, it is not just a formality. Speech is also a key step. How to give a speech and how to say it are all very debatable. Once you mess up, it will be a big joke. The content of the speech is Hokage's top priority, because it reflects Konoha's subsequent policies and goals. Nara Lu wrote a speech half guessing and half thinking. After pondering for a while, he felt it was inappropriate and made some modifications. This is just the first draft. Hoshino Kaede still needs to make the final decision, and he doesn't dare to overstep his authority. Phew, trouble, you can't fish anymore. After revising, the manuscript was saved, and the Nara deer lay on the table one by one. The decadent look was in line with the temperament of the Nara clan. Dad, what are you worried about? You look depressed? Xiao Lujio sat on his knees opposite Lu Yi and asked casually. My free days are gone. Nara said resentfully. Oh. Nara raised his eyelids, and then nothing more happened. Nara looked at his son speechlessly. Shouldn't it be a comfort at this time? At this time, Akamichi and Yamanaka arrived, greeted Nara Shikaku familiarly, and sat down casually. As soon as Nara Lu saw the two people hesitating to speak, he knew their purpose and turned to Lujio with a hint in his eyes. Nara Shikaku's wisdom has been revealed since he was a child. Knowing that the three of them were going to discuss something, he found a reason to leave. Shikaichi, you look lethargic. Yamanaka looked at his expression and found that there were heavy dark circles under his eyes. Nara scratched his head and complained, I can't help it. Lord Hokage leaves everything to me, so of course I have to take care of it. The speaker was unintentional, but the listener was intentional. Speaking of Hoshino Kaede, Yamanaka Yuan Yi's expression changed slightly. As soon as Nara saw this, he knew what his old friend was worried about, so he comforted him. Yuan Yi, you are worrying too much. Master Hokage is not what you think. Akamichi, who had been eating snacks, also agreed. As Tobirama's disciple, he naturally has a relationship with Hoshino Kaede. I also have some understanding of it, so naturally I won't worry. Yes, the teacher told us when he was still alive that as long as it is not a matter of principle, it will usually be fine. After hearing what the two of them said, the worry on Yamanaka Yueni's face disappeared and his expression softened. We Zulu Dai support Hokage, so we don't have to worry too much. The Hokage-sama can entrust me with the inauguration ceremony, which shows his goodwill. Nara looked deeper than they thought. Hoshino Kaede handed over the ceremony to him, and there was a sense of trust in it. All they had to do was follow closely behind him. That's true, I'm unfounded. Yamanaka Yueni suddenly realized, and then said with gloating. Other families may not be doing so well. I heard that the Hyuga family not only spit out all the profits it swallowed up, but also made additional compensation. Even the clan leader came to apologize personally. When Nara heard this, his expression changed, and then he shook his head and sighed. There are many smart people in the world. Hyuga has a very far-sighted vision. In this way, Hyuga will have no worries. Yamanaka was stunned after hearing this and asked, how do you say that? Hyuga is so decisive. He is the first to come to apologize. First of all, he has won in terms of impression. In addition, he has added additional compensation. Lord Hokage will definitely take a high look. This retreat not only gave Hyuga a talisman, but also left a good impression on Master Hokage. It's not unwise. The analysis left the two people sitting on the sidelines confused. They could understand it at the beginning, and their IQs were not bad, but the further back they went, the more confused they became, and they had only a little understanding. Alas. Looking at the two people who looked confused, Nara felt twice as tired. This team is not easy to lead. It's okay, as long as you know, Hyuga has made a lot of money. Nara didn't want to explain anymore, and there was no point in going deeper. Adding icing on the cake is far inferior to providing help in times of need, and one must prioritize one's mistakes when admitting one's mistakes. Seeing that Nara was not going to say anything, they stopped asking. The Nara clan has always been responsible for the things that use their brains. All they have to do is follow behind and wave the flag. On the street, a white-haired young man with a lewd look was lying in a hidden place peeping at the bathhouse. He was squinting and commenting constantly, and his mouth was almost drooling. While he was immersed in admiring the beautiful woman, a murderous intention appeared behind him, and his teeth grinded together. Come. Come. Ye. The roar soared into the sky and could be heard by most of Konoha. Tsunade walked towards Jiraiya with murderous intent on her face. Tsunade, I'm just looking for material. I definitely don't have any bad ideas. You have to believe me. Jiraiya quickly defended himself. But Tsunade wouldn't believe his lies. If Jiraiya could get rid of his habit of peeping, then she wouldn't gamble anymore. Bang. Boom. A powerful and heavy punch hit Jiraiya directly into the wall, instantly creating a big hole. Orochimaru looked at this scene expressionlessly, but his stern face couldn't help but twitch. After the punch, Tsunade felt comfortable all over. As expected, she would never talk nonsense to Jiraiya if she could do it. If you dare to peek again, I will make you regret it for the rest of your life. Tsunade said viciously to Jiraiya, who was grinning in pain. Hey, Tsunade, can you please be gentle? It hurts. Jiraiya complained. Tsunade snorted, you deserve it. Orochimaru, why don't you stop him? Jiraiya looked at Orochimaru again, trying to get a helper. Haha, you better be calm. You're going to see Master Hokage later. If Master Hokage finds out, you won't be able to reap the rewards. Orochimaru ignored his words and said instead. Hearing this, Tsunade glared at Jiraiya again, grabbed his ears, and put him under her nose. Orochimaru chuckled and followed him up. Chapter 86. Orochimaru's Desire. Dong dong dong, a series of knocks on the door sounded. Hoshino Kaede yawned and said, Who are you interrupting my lunch break? Click, Hoshino Kaede rubbed his eyes and opened the door. Brother Kaede. Tsunade greeted happily. Hoshino Kaede's sleepiness immediately disappeared without a trace. Little Tsunade, you are so big. Tsunade said dissatisfied, I'm not young anymore. Yes, Tsunade. Hoshino Kaede was a little funny, but still a little childish. Jiraiya, your face. Hoshino Kaede turned his eyes and looked at Jiraiya in surprise. Ugh, Hoshino-sama, you have to take care of Tsunade, it's too violent. Jiraiya cried, his tone aggrieved. Orochimaru moved aside calmly, looking at his nose and heart, as if he didn't recognize him. Tsunade clenched her fists and threatened with force, Jiraiya. It seems that I was too gentle. Who told you to talk nonsense? Why did I talk nonsense? Did I say something wrong? Perhaps Hoshino Kaede was present, and Jiraiya became more courageous. He usually got beaten in silence. When Tsunade heard this, she was so angry that she rolled up her sleeves and was about to beat him, giving him a lesson that would hurt his bones. Hoshino Kaede shook his head, rolled his eyes, and said teasingly, hitting is kissing, scolding is loving. Tsunade, you probably don't like Jiraiya. The words were shocking. The three of them stood still in shock. Jiraiya reacted the fastest and immediately jumped to his feet and said, how is it possible? How could I like this violent woman? Unless Sage of Six Paths is alive, I will never like her until I die. Tsunade's eyes were spitting fire, and she immediately began to talk about physics theory. What? Do you dare to say it again? Jiraiya stiffened his neck and ran out stubbornly, turning back to continue provoking Tsunade, looking like he was never tired of it. I've said it 100 times. Hoshino Kaede looked at the two people's retreating figures and suddenly became happy. These two people are quite interesting, right, Orochimaru? Haha. A smile appeared on Orochimaru's cold face, which looked uglier than crying. Hoshino Kaede looked at him. Uncle Snake was more normal at this time than he was later. You three came to my place just to say hello, right? Hoshino Kaede asked. Orochimaru said, I have something to ask Hoshino-sama. Huh? Hoshino Kaede raised an eyebrow. Tell me the story. After a pause, Orochimaru said seriously, life in the world is so fragile, why do you still have to work hard to live? Hoshino Kaede narrowed his eyes, why do you think so? Orochimaru's expression darkened, as if he was remembering something bad. When I was a child, I witnessed the death of my parents with my own eyes. At that time, I felt that the sky was falling and I was confused all day long. After that, I have been trying to find the meaning of life, but I found that death was all around me. I was very confused. Hoshino Kaede looked at Orochimaru, who looked confused and was silent for a while before answering him. You asked a question that I was confused about. Orochimaru's eyes lit up and he looked at him expectantly. This issue is very broad, and one word is not enough to explain it, but I can tell you that life is accompanied by death, and both are indispensable. As he spoke, Hoshino Kaede tapped his forehead with his finger, and a ray of light suddenly poured into his brain. Orochimaru's thoughts drifted into the distance, following the dim light back to the past. He saw his newborn appearance, and the baby's cry heralded the beginning of life. The mother's loving look hung on her face, she looked at the little person and whispered softly. Mother, mother. Orochimaru's vague memories of childhood emerged, and he couldn't help but shed tears in his eyes as he murmured to himself. Scenes from his childhood were played out before his eyes, until his parents passed away. Everyone has emotions and desires, even if he is Orochimaru, his heart is hurting and his emotions are flowing out uncontrollably. Reason told him that these things have passed and are not worth remembering. But his instinctive emotion made him unable to hold back tears. Orochimaru stretched out his hand tremblingly, wanting to touch the mother in his memory. But the memory is just a memory. The trembling fingers passed through the mother's chest, everything was so unreal. Boom, just when he was stunned, a bang pulled him back to reality. Outside, Orochimaru cried silently, big tears sliding down his cheeks, and his dull eyes came back to consciousness. What you long for in your heart should be love, the love of your parents. Hoshino Kaede's voice suddenly sounded. Orochimaru remained silent and touched his heart. His warm heart was beating strongly, which was given by his mother. You asked about the meaning of life, but I think it should be this. There is nothing wrong with immortality. If you want to pursue it, it has nothing to do with me. Time is fate. The plain words penetrated deeply into Orochimaru's heart, and a seed was planted in his heart. Orochimaru touched the tears on his face and smiled in relief. Thank you. He said thank you with his greatest respect. It doesn't matter, they are all children of Konoha, it's what I should do. Hoshino Kaede waved his hand and looked at him gently. This is a talent among talents. How many years does it take for the ninja world to produce a technological genius? It is very important to the future development of Konoha, so of course we must take good care of it. Technology changes life, but first we must change the person who affects technology. In the 27th year of Konoha, the weather is sunny and the temperature is moderate. A joyful atmosphere filled the entire Konoha village, and every household had a look of joy on their faces. Because today is the inauguration ceremony of Third Hokage. The villagers gathered at the Hokage building, which was full of people and bustling with people. After a moment, Hoshino Kaede's figure slowly walked out, instantly causing a scream. Hoshino-sama! Hoshino-sama! Wow wow wow! Look here! Here! Hoshino Kaede, who was wearing a Hokage robe, looked at the enthusiastic villagers and couldn't help but sigh. Standing in the Hokage building, overlooking the crowd, a sense of pride and ambition arose spontaneously. Everyone! Hoshino Kaede raised his hand and pressed it. There was silence for a moment, but his soft words resounded in everyone's ears. Her warm and gentle face is like a breeze blowing on your face, giving people hope. Everyone looked up at him with admiration in their eyes. Behind Hoshino Fong, the heads of the major clans all had solemn faces. Even Jiraiya, who was always out of his mind, became quiet. All the high-level officials of Konoha gathered together. Looking at Hoshino Kaede in front of them, Hoshino Yoda and Kinomoto Sakura were both filled with emotion. The kid who acted coquettishly with them back then was already able to take over Konoha. Uzumaki Mito looked at the high-spirited Hoshino Kaede, and couldn't help recalling the past in his eyes. Back then, Hashirama seemed to be the same as now, he was the center of attention. So awesome. Hoshino Teru opened his mouth wide, looking surprised. I will also be a Hokage from now on. The little man swore secretly in his heart. Chapter 87. Third Hokage Inauguration Ceremony. Hoshino Kaede looked around and said with excitement. It has been 27 years since the first Hokage pacified the troubled times and established the Leaf Village. Konoha's transformation from being a desolate wasteland to being able to live and work in peace and contentment today is inseparable from everyone's struggle and hard work. The hard work of the second Hokage has laid a deep foundation for Konoha. The quality of life is increasing day by day, and an atmosphere of peace fills Konoha village. His voice was slow and low, carrying the accumulation of time and memories of the past. But it makes people feel a sense of belonging and pride. Sonorous and powerful language mobilizes the emotions in people's hearts, like war drums, stirring in people's ears. People's faces gradually turned red, and their eyes shone with excitement, as if they could see their past efforts and persistence, as well as their hopes and aspirations for the future. The figure of Hoshino Kaede was reflected in his eyes, and the worship in his heart became more fervent and firm. Long live Shodai. Long live Night-Aim. Long live Hoshino-sama. I don't know who raised his head and shouted excitedly. It caused a chain reaction, with waves of praise rising higher than the wave after wave. The atmosphere at the scene was boiling, and the momentum seemed to overturn the sky. Hoshino Kaede raised his hand and pressed down again, his voice gradually calmed down, and he continued. I was born in the first year of Konoha, the year of its founding. I grew up with Konoha and was later accepted as a disciple by First Hokage. That time was the most relaxing moment for me and the warmest moment. Hoshino Kaede's eyes flashed with tears, and her voice couldn't help but start to sound sad. A sad mood spread, and people seemed to see the figure of the master and disciple running in the sunset. Emotions are contagious, and there were whimpering and tears welling up. The joyful atmosphere suddenly changed, but then Hoshino Kaede's voice was high and his expression was solemn. But time is ruthless. It took away my teacher. When he said goodbye, the teacher told me that life must be moved forward, and sadness is temporary. Suffering will eventually pass, and the future is in your hands and mine. And today, I will inherit the teacher's legacy and serve as the third Hokage. I feel honored for this. At the same time, I also feel a heavy responsibility. Konoha is everyone's Konoha, and Hokage also serves everyone. Take it from the people, use it for the people. I firmly believe that as long as we work together, there is no difficulty that cannot be overcome. Finally, I want to say that wherever the leaves are flying, the fire is endless. Let's contribute to the construction of Konoha together. The speech ended, and after a brief silence, there was an earth-shattering scream. Kaede Hoshino's speech was passionate and full of emotions, like a roller coaster. But the effect was outstanding, everyone was in high spirits, and the originally shaken public sentiment was calmed down. An inauguration ceremony can restore the public support that Konoha has lost over the years, which is not a bad idea. Even Nara Louis, who was watching from the sidelines, couldn't control his emotions. It was so inspiring. Fortunately, Hoshino-sama was born in Konoha, and fortunately he is the Hokage. This kind of Hokage is a blessing to Konoha and the people. I seem to have seen the day when Konoha prospered. Nara murmured. His eyes flickered uncertainly, with a hint of excitement and longing. After the ceremony, the crowd dispersed, but the topic still lingered, and Hoshino Kaede breathed a sigh of relief. He finally got it done. It was not in vain that he considered the words for so long, but the effect was good. He is not good at talking, but he is just taking advantage of his past life. Brother. You were so handsome just now. Hoshino Teru nuzzled him like a dog, looking like he was obsessed with his younger brother. Hoshino Kaede smiled and touched his head. It's useless to be handsome. Only when you let Konoha develop can you be truly handsome. Hoshino Teru's little mind was thoughtful. Seeing this, Hoshino Kaede just smiled and looked at Nara Shikaichi. Shikaichi, inform all senior officials that there is something to announce. Yes. Nara nodded immediately without hesitation. Son, you really surprised me today. After Nara left, Hoshino Yoda stepped forward and said. It's nothing, it's just what I said from my heart, I just polished it a bit. Hoshino Kaede said modestly. Uzumaki Mito covered his mouth and smiled. I didn't realize before that you still have such a mouth. Today's speech will probably cause an uproar, and Konoha will be lively again. Hearing this, Hoshino Kaede spread his hands and pretended to be helpless and said, Oh, I can't help it, it's just a whim. It's just as exciting as it is, and it's not bad at all. You. Uzumaki Mito naturally didn't believe it and just shook his head. Hokage-sama, everyone is here. Mariboshi Kosuka suddenly said. Hoshino Kaede nodded, I'm leaving now. I won't be going back recently. There are still many things for me to solve. Hoshino Yoda nodded and sighed inwardly. I used to be less at home, but now that I have finally come back, it's still the same. All I can say is that everyone has their own pros and cons. Zixiao, Zhenheng, Yi, you come with me. Hoshino Kaede called the names of the 3 disciples, and then went to the conference room. The 3 of them were also confused, but they reacted quickly and followed immediately. Hoshino Kaede, wearing a Hokage robe, hurried to the conference room. From this moment on, the burden of Konoha was placed on his shoulders. The new Hokage seemed very quiet, or in awe, during his first meeting. Before succeeding the Hokage, Hoshino Kaede urged all clans to hand over the corrupt money, so it was delayed until today. Among them, there are also families who are lucky and feel that the law does not punish the public, thinking that they can get away with it. But they misjudged Hoshino Kaede and overestimated themselves. After learning about this, he made a prompt decision and asked Umbu to be imprisoned directly. This thunderous method made all races fearful, and the last trace of luck was cut off. In those days, Hoshino Kaede showed sharp tactics, as if telling them that this was the consequences of disobeying. Therefore, no one dares to speak freely at this moment, because of His Majesty. The last time this happened was when First Hokage selected the second-generation destination. Everyone is very quiet, why are you not talking? Hoshino Kaede pushed the gate of opening, and a depressing atmosphere came over him. Looking around, everyone shrank their heads and remained silent. Seeing this, Hoshino Kaede shook his head. It seemed that he was frightened, but it was normal. There had indeed been some turmoil recently. It's time to loosen their tight strings. It would be beneficial to both parties to give him a slap and a sweet date. Today's Konoha still needs them to maintain it, so we can't push it any further. I called everyone here because I am planning to reform Konoha's institutions. In the past, many institutions had duplicate responsibilities, which was too inconvenient. So, I want to replan. Hoshino Kaede said with a smile, his face was gentle and not arrogant at all. Everyone looked at each other in confusion, wondering what kind of medicine Hoshino Fong was selling. Chapter 88. Great changes, one word decides the future. Now that Konoha's institutions have matured and various mechanisms have been perfected, it stands to reason that this will not change in the future. Now that Hoshino Kaede said this, it really made everyone look confused. Hoshino Kaede looked at their puzzled expressions, smiled, and nodded to Nara deer beside him. Nara thought for a while, took out a document, and then said, according to Master Hokage's instructions, make the following adjustments. As he spoke, his voice paused, and then he looked at Uchiha Beidou and said. The Konoha Guard was abolished and changed to the Public Security Department, which will still be held by the Uchiha clan chief, and Kurama Izumo will be the deputy chief. This change made everyone's eyes move slightly. There is nothing surprising about Uchiha, but the Kurama clan is very surprising. This clan's presence in Konoha is very low, and except for Genjutsu, there is no one they can take action against. But they were surprised, and they would not lose their composure because of it, but the next sentence made their expressions change. Especially Uchiha Beidou's face was gloomy, like dark clouds covering the earth on a rainy day. The personnel are composed of Uchiha and other families. Uchiha cannot exceed half the number. As the words fell, a murmur suddenly arose in the venue, all of which were discussing this item. Since the founding of Konoha, Uchiha has always maintained public security in the village and has never had anything to do with other families. But now, this stereotype has been directly broken, half of the personnel have been removed, which is equivalent to Uchiha's rights being reduced. The huge changes made some keen people look at Uchiha Beidou with gloating in their eyes. Lord Hokage. Why? Sure enough, after hearing this arrangement, Uchiha Kitajima couldn't help but stand up and ask. He cannot accept that the rights that belong to Uchiha should be given to other families. If the family knew about it, it would definitely cause an uproar and even cause turmoil. Uchiha Beidou's eyes flashed with anger and remorse. He regretted that he had been impulsive and actually asked out loud. But, if you don't ask, things will get worse. The interrupted Nara looked at Uchiha Kitajima, and then looked at Hoshino Kaede, his eyes seemed to be asking. Hoshino Kaede nodded slightly and motioned for him to explain. Chief Kitajima, please be patient. Master Hokage will explain it to you later. After receiving permission, Nara was determined and said to Uchiha Kitajima with a smile. Hearing this, Uchiha Beidou sat back, but his expression was still ugly. Nara cleared his throat and continued to announce. The administrative department was abolished and 3 elders were added, headed by Hiruzen Sarutobi, Danzo Shimura and Nara Shikaichi. When Nara saw his name, he paused for a second, and his heart was filled with ups and downs. I almost dropped the documents in my hand. The administration department originally assisted Hokage in handling some government affairs, and could also influence legislation, so it had a very high status. Although it has been abolished now, additional elders can be added to fill the vacancies, which is equivalent to existing. He was not surprised that Sarutobi Hiruzen and Shimura Danzo were the elders, but he was also on it, which surprised him. The elders only have the right to make suggestions, not decisions. Everything is subject to Hokage. After saying these words, Nara's mind cleared up and he understood Shirahoshi Yefeng's intention. This is because I want to find a part-time job for myself, which will not affect the Hokage's status and can make money. It is worthy of the Hokage-sama's temperament. After complaining for a while in his heart, Nara Lu adjusted his mind and said immediately. The finance minister will be transferred to Koharu, and the deputy minister will be Mito Munin. Finance can be said to be an important institution. Don't worry if you have money. The 2 people who heard their names were in disbelief. They thought they would not have a share, but unexpectedly the surprise came very suddenly. After a while of excitement, he slowly calmed down and remained calm on the surface. The Minister of Education is concurrently appointed by Hokage, the Minister of Umbu is appointed by Hatake Sakumo, and the Deputy Minister is appointed by Mitarashi Zishiao. After listening, everyone was thoughtful again. The Ministry of Education is fine, but Umbu is different. In terms of authority alone, Umbu can be said to be subordinate to 1 person and superior to 10,000 people. His power is boundless and he is only responsible to Hokage. Now Danzo has not established a route, so Umbu's 2-point behavior does not exist. A single Umbu is extremely scary. Hatake Sakumo's eyes gradually became troubled. He couldn't help but touch the scabbard behind him, and his eyes gradually became firm. Mitarashi Zishiao touched his nose. The surprise on his face has not dissipated. Obviously he did not know that Hoshino Kaede would arrange this. The intelligence department and the interrogation department were merged into one department, called the Military Intelligence Department. The director is Yamanaka Yuanichi, and the deputy director is Marino Soha. The Minister of Medical Affairs is temporarily vacant, and the capable person will take up the position. Except for Umbu, all departments have equal status and there is no distinction between superior and inferior. At this point, Nara Lu finished speaking. Everyone was still recovering from the series of arrangements, and then, with Hoshino Kaede's acquiescence, they began to discuss with each other in low voices. Everyone's mood is different, and this adjustment makes them think differently. This is the second high-level power reshuffle after the first Hokage. Half an hour later, Hoshino Kaede slowly opened his eyes, and for a moment, the meeting became quiet. Uchiha Beidou was nervous inside and looked at Hoshino Kaede eagerly. Chief Kitajima, Hoshino Kaede looked at Uchiha Kitajima. Everyone looked over. After all, Uchiha's rights had been severely reduced just now. This will definitely make people think that third Hokage is suppressing them. Without a reasonable explanation, I'm afraid Uchiha will have a difficult future. Did Uchiha come up with a Hokage? Hoshino Kaede's shocking question immediately made Uchiha Kitajima stunned. Even the others were shocked by these words. Your expression has already answered me. Uchiha Kitajima's face was struggling, Hoshino Kaede said with a smile. As another clan that founded Konoha with the Senju clan, the position of Hokage has been coveted by you for a long time. Uchiha Beidou felt a thump in his heart and hurriedly wanted to explain. The expressions in the eyes of all races gradually turned into amusement. No, Hokage-sama, we. Hoshino Kaede waved his hand, interrupted him, and continued, I have no other meaning. Everyone in Konoha can become a Hokage, as long as he is a villager in Konoha, that's fine. Everyone was stunned. This means Uchiha is also okay? Uchiha Kitajima looked happy, but before Hoshino Kaede finished speaking, the topic changed. But Uchiha's arrogance is well known in the ninja world, and this is a must for the Hokage. Today, I will withdraw the guard force and introduce it to other families. It will be beneficial to you without any harm. Chief Beidou, people can be proud but not arrogant. Everyone in Konoha is the same. Hoshino Kaede said the last words meaningfully, looking back and forth at everyone. Chapter 89. The Dawn of Uchiha. The gaze was extremely deep, as if it penetrated their hearts and reached straight to the bottom of their hearts. I just felt a chill on my back, as if I was being stared at by something. A bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and everyone looked at each other. The co-author is talking about Uchiha on the surface, but in fact he is talking about them in an insinuating way. If Hoshino Kaede knew what they were thinking, he would definitely wave his hands and shake his head. I am not reminding you overtly and covertly, it is clear that both are beating. It's not that Uchiha can't produce a Hokage. I can even promise that as long as Uchiha is supported by the people of Konoha, no matter who he is, he can become a Hokage. Hoshino Kaede looked at Uchiha Kitajima with a smile and promised. Really? Uchiha Beidou couldn't believe it. They had already wanted to take the Hokage position, but they just didn't have the chance. Since the establishment of the police force, Uchiha's reputation in the village has plummeted. He enforces the law selflessly, but the villagers say he is ruthless behind his back. This ruined their reputation in the village, and no one wanted to see them. Of course. Hoshino Kaede nodded solemnly. But I think this may not be something that happens in a day or two. It takes time and effort. You need to be mentally prepared. Hoshino Kaede said. But Uchiha Kitajima was already ecstatic and excited. Sharingan was turned on. I don't know if he can change it, but Hoshino Kaede's words are equivalent to telling him that as long as he meets the conditions, he will be the next Hokage. Regardless of whether there is or not, as long as they are given a chance, the family will be excited. Uchiha has never been afraid of competition, not even on the battlefield. He is worried that the road to the Hokage will be blocked, leaving no space. There has always been speculation among them. It is believed that the second Hokage specifically gave them the thankless job of the police force in order to prevent the Hokage from falling into the hands of Uchiha. Although it cannot be proven true or false, reality tells them the cruel truth. This is a pit, and inside it are endless temptations, waiting for Uchiha to jump. Once you jump down, it will be difficult to come back up. You can't easily lose the meat you get. And now, Hoshino Kaede gave him a chance to go up the pothole. This allowed a ray of light called hope to shine through the dark underground. Uchiha Beidou was so excited that he almost couldn't restrain himself. Later, Hoshino Kaede said to others, "These words apply to Uchiha, and they also apply to you. The Hokage is not a position for self-interest." Hoshino Kaede continued, "The previous policies of Konoha should be changed and changed. Lu-e, you don't have to worry about anything if you discuss it with the other two elders." The domineering words echoed at this moment, and everyone seemed to see the shadow of second generation. The same dictatorship, the same strength. Yes. Nara nodded seriously. Shang Feng got the sword and no one dared to stop him. After the meeting, everyone had different expressions on their faces, either happy, worried, or afraid. All kinds of things in the world appear here. "Teacher, what about me and Jinhong?" Yu Guangye said hurriedly after they left. "You?" Hoshino Kaede pondered for a moment, looking distressed. "It seems like there's nothing left for you." Then he asked, "How about you become a teacher and partner with Gao Hu?" "What, being a teacher is boring." Yu Guangye immediately shook his head and quit. Facing a group of naughty children all day long, he was afraid that he couldn't hold back the knife in his hand, so he ended up with one knife. Hoshino Kaede thought for a while and said, "Let's do this. You and Jinhong go find Yamanaka Yuan-e. That should be a suitable place for you. Your blood inheritance limit plus the true red genjutsu should be able to play a big role." Hearing this, the moonlight night and sunset really brightened up. Seeing the appearance of the two of them, Hoshino Kaede felt a little funny. Suddenly, his heart moved and he continued. "Umbu also has a position there, but now there are not enough manpower, and the top-level strength is a little less interesting." "Hey, this is interesting. I find it boring to make small fuss." Yu Guangye held his head high, extremely satisfied. Hoshino Kaede glanced at him and said faintly, "Umbu is not as good as usual, you have to be more restrained." Yu Guangye laughed twice, said yes quickly, and took a step back without leaving any trace. "Teacher, I will watch ye." The steady Jinhong stood up. Hoshino Kaede nodded with satisfaction, and then glared at Moonlight Yoruchi. "Go on, you are such an adult now, you don't need to be like you were when you were a kid." Hoshino Kaede waved his hand, the two of them smiled awkwardly and left here. Time flies so fast. Hoshino Kaede sighed, and then immersed himself in the sea of books. There were a lot of things that he had to deal with now, but he had no time to think about it. Uchiha Beidou was overjoyed to return home. He couldn't hide the joy on his face, and his mood was as good as ever. "What's wrong? Are you so happy?" A charming woman was sitting on the tatami, playing with food and smiling at him. There was a little kid beside him, sitting upright on his knees, looking like a little adult. Uchiha Beidou first looked at his son and saw that he was sitting in good posture. He nodded with satisfaction and then said, "Of course I am happy. Today's meeting has made a huge difference." At home, Beidou seemed a bit gentler, and the clan leader's aura had also calmed down a lot. Uchiha Fugaku glanced at his father curiously, then quickly lowered his head. Beidou is very strict on weekdays and is not allowed to talk during meals. Afterwards, Kitajima explained the arrangements for Uchiha in the meeting. "Liang, you know, this is a great joy for Uchiha." Uchiha Beidou said excitedly. Uchiha Liangya is not ignorant and knows how important this matter is to Uchiha. But she still said with some worry, "But, Beidou, you can see clearly, but that doesn't mean that the elders in the clan can see clearly." Liang's reminder was like a basin of cold water poured down from head to toe, extinguishing Beidou's excitement. Then he sighed, "Oh, you are right, it will take some time to convince the elders." And Fugaku, who had been lowering his head to eat, suddenly said in confusion, "But isn't this a harmless thing? Why should you object?" The childish voice suddenly broke in. Beidou frowned, then relaxed his brows, a hint of approval flashed in his eyes, and he snorted. Because they felt it was an insult to Uchiha's honor. Speaking of this, Beidou couldn't help but sneer, looking very disdainful. This kind of superficial glory is of no use at all. It is dross for the family and the individual. Uchiha Fugaku was thoughtful, his little head turning rapidly. "It's great that you can ask that." After Beidou finished speaking, he suddenly praised. Uchiha Fugaku was stunned for a moment, but then smiled happily. "There are not many times when I can be praised by my father. You guys should eat first. I'm going to the tribe for a meeting first. This matter must be resolved as soon as possible." Uchiha Beidou put down the bowls and chopsticks and stood up. We will never let those stubborn people affect the overall situation. Bei Dao was full of murderous intent, his scarlet eyes turning. Chapter 90. Begging Children, Crisis of Trust. The next day dawned and the sun rose in the east. Hoshino Kaede looked at the morning light outside the window, stood up and stretched. After sitting all night, my waist bones became much stiffer. Lord Hokage, there was a riot in the Uchiha tribe last night. An umbu suddenly knelt on the ground and disappeared. Hoshino Kaede nodded slightly, waved his hand and said, I understand. Umbu heard the words and walked away without a leaf touching his body, and there was no movement. This Uchiha clan leader is smart and knows how to observe the situation. Hoshino Kaede thought to himself. However, it's a bit difficult for him to do it alone. It seems we have to look at the next one, Fugaku? Hoshino Kaede had a complicated expression when he thought of what Uchiha Fugaku had done. He was indecisive, slipped up at the critical moment, but did not dare to fight back, and gave his life to his son, just to fulfill his destiny and ruin the Uchiha clan. Forget it, I'll watch it then. Anyway, as long as I'm here, Uchiha won't be able to cause any trouble. Hoshino Kaede chuckled, thinking clearly. Having strength means being able to do whatever you want, which is his greatest confidence. Go out for a walk. Even the Hokage must be in line with the people. Hoshino Kaede couldn't help but have such an idea, as if on a whim. Then he changed his outfit and used the transformation technique to change his appearance. After all, with his reputation, everyone probably knows him. When we came to the street, people were coming and going, and everyone seemed to be very busy, racing against time and walking in a hurry. Hoshino Kaede saw this and couldn't help but shake his head. We still need to develop. After sighing, several thin figures suddenly caught his attention. His brows were furrowed, and his face instantly darkened. In front of a vendor, several children looked pleading and kept pleading, hoping to get some food. Please, give me something to eat. Upon hearing this, the vendor owner said with a look of disgust, go away, don't disturb my business. The leading child looked gloomy and left disappointed. We have been away for a long time. It's time to go back, otherwise the dean will be angry. The child behind him said timidly, his little eyes full of eagerness. The child named Yu bit his lip stubbornly, shook his head, and turned back to them. No, the dean's mother is already very busy. We have to share some of it with her, even if it's just a little bit. The remaining children fell silent one after another. Children from poor families have long been in charge, and they can more or less feel the difficulty of the dean. It was better in the past few years, but in recent years, Konoha's economy has been sluggish and the upper class are fighting for power. Naturally, money-losing things like orphanages will not have enough funds to maintain operations. At this time, a child suddenly said, I heard that the new Hokage took office, I wonder if there can be any changes. Humph. Before the other children could say anything, you said with disdain, change? It would be nice if it doesn't harm us. Those high-level officials don't care about our lives at all. Speaking of this, you looked excited, and hatred flashed across his face. He didn't know what he had gone through to be like this. Hoshino Kaede's eyes were dark, and he couldn't tell what he felt in his heart. He seemed to be too optimistic. Even the children are disappointed with the senior management, let alone the adults. Konoha has reached a moment of crisis, a crisis of losing the hearts of the people. But I heard that when he took over the throne a few days ago, many people were cheering. Yusuke said softly. Yu's face was struggling, and his first reaction was that he didn't believe it. He was doing it for others to see. Yes, I sneaked out to see it that day. Another child echoed, maybe he has seen it before, with a look of expectation in his eyes. The mountains are roaring and the tsunami is roaring, and the expression is joyful. I seem to see the hope that the dean's mother said. His eyes are expectant and extremely eager. Even if you have been in darkness for a long time, you still have hope in your heart, longing for a ray of light to shine through the darkness and break through the haze. Yu pursed his lips, still stubborn and unbelieving, and said harshly, don't be stupid, people like us are worse than trash, let alone hope. His words were like a basin of cold water, instantly extinguishing the hope that was about to be ignited, leaving only a glimmer of light that was about to be extinguished. Everyone couldn't help but lower their heads, feeling inferior and feeling downcast. I don't think so. The sudden adult voice sounded, startling them. Hoshino Kaede slowly walked up to them, with a loving expression and a gentle face. Let them feel as if a breeze blows away the haze. But soon, you became alert and took a few steps back with the other children. Who are you? What do you want to do? Yu has a stern voice but a soft heart, and looks tough on the outside, but inside he is nervous, fearing that the person coming is a bad guy. Seeing his appearance, Hoshino Kaede couldn't help but chuckle, smiling with tears in his eyes. These children should have been nestled in the arms of their parents, enjoying the care and love comfortably, but now they are like frightened rabbits, and every move makes them scared and trembling. This made him feel another pain in his heart. Yu's eyes were full of doubts. This man was a little strange, and he actually cried. However, even so, he did not relax at all, but became more vigilant. Danger is never exposed on the surface, but hidden deeper, waiting for you to give you a fatal blow the moment you relax. You are. Suddenly, the child who sneaked out before looked suspicious, feeling that the person in front of him was very familiar. After looking intently for a moment, he exclaimed, "You are Lord Hokage." Hoshino Kaede has long since released his transformation technique, and the succession ceremony has only been a few days, so it is not surprising that he can be recognized. Yu asked in a low voice while looking at Hoshino Kaede. Are you sure he is the third Hokage? He was disappointed with the senior management and had no respect for Hokage. Well, this was the man who stood at the Hokage building that day and gave a speech, causing many people to cheer. The child nodded with certainty. If you hadn't pulled him, he would have run up. So what if it's Hokage? He's the same as those people. Yu gritted his teeth, whining like a little wolf cub, with a look of ferocity and distrust on his face. Hoshino Kaede didn't care about his attitude, or in other words, he had no reason to care. This kid hates the higher-ups so much, and it must be obvious why. Hoshino Kaede lost his mind at this moment, his eyes blurred. At this moment, Yu Xian was cruel, rushed forward at an extremely fast speed, and bit Hoshino Kaede's wrist with his small teeth. Hiss, there was no weakness in this force. With one mouthful, Hoshino Kaede felt the pain instantly fill up. The red blood flowed into Yu's mouth, and the stimulating smell once again aroused his blood. Swish. Hokage-sama. Umbu, who was hiding in the dark, appeared instantly and was about to step forward to pull Yu away, but was scolded by Hoshino Kaede. Don't come over, this is a matter between me and this child, no need to interfere.